So, welcome to this third video on the subject of going for refuge. In Triratna, going for refuge isn't considered a preparatory practice, as it's taught in some Eastern traditions of Buddhism. Sangharakshita taught that going for refuge is something we deepen throughout the course of our spiritual lives until the attainment of enlightenment. In the last video, we looked at how to deepen our motivation to go for refuge by developing an awareness of dukkha. Dukkha being the unsatisfactoriness of conditioned existence, meaning our everyday lives. We also looked at Shraddha, the faith that there's something beyond what we know. Call it reality, call it truth, call it the transcendental, call it enlightenment. We saw how Shraddha arises in dependence on dukkha, and awareness of dukkha arises when we stay in the gap between feeling and craving. We saw that there exist wrong views, views that don't correspond to reality, that don't correspond to how things really are. And we saw that there are right views that do correspond to reality, that do correspond to how things really are. And that we can try to live by right views and give up wrong views. Wrong views which arise because our vision is weak. Our vision is narrow. Our vision is distorted, meaning our awareness, our understanding is weak, narrow, and distorted. Awareness of self, of others and world, understanding of self, others and world. Right views are strong, broad and clear. Our awareness, our understanding is strong, broad and clear of self, others and world. The source of wrong views is the world, samsara. The source of right views are the spiritually mature. And we can go for refuge to those who have right view. We can try to be receptive, supremely receptive to them. But we can go still further. We saw how beyond right views, views which are still ideas, still belong to the realm of the intellect. We have perfect vision, direct vision of things as they really are. face to face with reality, without distortion. But perfect vision is beyond the capacity of words to express. It's the way, it's the state of mind, the state of consciousness of a Buddha. His permanent way of seeing things, perfect vision, which frees him up, can free us up from suffering and gives rise to qualities of the highest wisdom and compassion. So we can go from wrong view to right view, and from right view to perfect vision. But how do we get to perfect vision, to the state of a Buddha, from where we are now? There are many formulations of that path to make that great journey. We touched on the spiral path, being one of them in our last video. The subject of this video will be not so much deeper practices themselves, but deepening our approach to practice, our attitude to practice. Concisely put, deepening our going for refuge. So, how can we analyze our deepening approach to practicing the Dharma, to going for refuge? Well, we can do so by looking at 4 levels. Levels which start with where we are now and finish all the way at enlightenment, all the way up there at enlightenment. These 4 levels of going for refuge aren't something you'll find in Eastern Buddhism. It's one of the new ways Sangharakshita found to express the Dharma, using Western culture. Although these teachings were implicit rather than explicit in the Dharma as taught by the Buddha. So, starting with the first level of going for refuge, where we are now. In fact, this level has 2 aspects. The first aspect is what Sangharakshita, what Bhante Sangharakshita called social or cultural going for refuge. This is for people living in a Buddhist culture. And it's what people often think of when they think of Buddhism. Examples of what people do at this level. They may go to the temple on Sundays, light incense before statues of Buddhas, perform rituals, chant mantras. It seems a little like praying, giving dana to the monks, who are considered the real Buddhists. And of course, all of these are good things, but by themselves not enough for somebody who's seriously practicing Buddhism. People practicing on this level, people practicing in this way, often consider themselves born Buddhists. Buddhism is part of their culture, their cultural heritage, their group identity. It's a position many in the East find themselves. And people in Russia, thinking of this level, might say, why do we need Buddhism? We have our own Christian culture. So this is social or cultural, going for refuge. A question for you to think about, to write in our groups. The answer, what do you think exists beyond this level? Where can we go further? And secondly, the second aspect, still at the same level, is what Sangharakshita called provisional going for refuge. This is a level for those outside established Buddhist culture. When we live in a non-Buddhist culture, a question for you, what do you think is an expression of provisional going for refuge for us in Russia? My answer is maybe we start coming to classes and continue. We learn the teachings and practices, try to be constantly aware, try to unify our energies, try to relate to everybody with metta, stop negative habits like drinking or smoking, read Dharma books so as to know which are the wrong views to drop, which are the right views to try and live by, and try doing rituals like the refuges and precepts and puja, and have personal contact with other Buddhists, others doing the same thing. But it's provisional, meaning we try it and see if we get happier, clearer, do our relations with others improve? Do our friends and family notice any positive change in us? As we've seen, there's no need for blind faith in Buddhism. We need to examine our own experience, but at the same time, bearing in mind, the Buddha says he was enlightened. The Buddha was enlightened. He reached the pinnacle of existence, the perfection of the evolution of the individual. He saw reality face to face, directly. He saw things as they really are. And his teachings the Dharma which we learn come from that experience of reality. So while not having blind faith, it's worth taking his teachings very, very seriously, giving them a lot of attention, trying very hard to understand them and practice them. So provisional going for refuge combines both elements. A provisional approach to teachings and practices. Try them and see. As well as going for refuge itself. Remembering the Buddha was a Buddha. A question for you to think about and reply. Some are more prone to relying on themselves. Others more prone to relying on someone else, a Buddha. Different characters, different temperaments. Which are you? So we come along to classes in Triratna. We're provisionally going for refuge. And when we feel ready, we can ask to become a mitra. The word mitra means friend in Sanskrit. So it's a relationship, primarily a relationship to others in Triratna, formally becoming a friend. We become mitras in a simple and beautiful ceremony, having reached a certain level of practice, although we're still provisionally going for refuge. And if we want to take our practice further and deeper, we can ask for ordination, ask to become an order member. The Triratna Buddhist Order exists at the heart of the Triratna Buddhist Community. While we're preparing for ordination, which can take 3 years or maybe much longer, we're still provisionally going for refuge. And what happens next? So we become ready to join the order. We become ready to be order members, members of the Triratna Buddhist Order. We're now going for refuge reaches the next level. It's no longer provisional, it becomes effective. A question for you right now. What do you think it means to go for refuge at this level? What changes so we go from provisional to effective going for refuge? Be useful to think about this question before listening to what else I'm going to say. Spoiler time, my answer is almost. Effective going for refuge means, well, it has an effect. We go for refuge to the three jewels to such an extent that our practice has an effect. It has an effect on us. We start changing. And this change isn't just taking in new ideas. Our character itself starts changing. Our state of mind, our emotions, our intentions change for the better. And this change can be noticed, can be seen by other people. But there's also another aspect of effective going for refuge that distinguishes it from provisional going for refuge. When our going for refuge becomes effective, we commit ourselves. Ultimately, we commit until the attainment of enlightenment. We commit to attaining enlightenment. And commitment becomes our primary attitude to the three jewels. And we're considered able to maintain this commitment as long as we stay in good conditions for practice. In some conditions, in negative conditions, it's very, very difficult to practice. But here, it's enough to be able to commit, which is hard enough in itself. When we're in good conditions, so going for refuge is no longer provisional. We've decided. And it's not a general commitment, but a specific one, including a commitment to one teacher and one teaching, practicing in one sangha with particular people, giving rise to the possibility of lifelong friendships. So we don't just vanish when something difficult comes up. We stay around and work through it. We work on our own mind to come maybe to a new understanding of what's going on. So all of this is included in the idea of commitment. Making a strong decision to do something. An individual decision. It's our responsibility. And a free decision. But a question for you. How does the word commitment make you feel? Free or trapped? Sangharakshita stressed the need for commitment in our spiritual practice. Even the impossibility of making real progress without it. The importance of deepening our commitment, a key objective of practice. Something we consciously develop. And a question for you right now to answer in chat. What are you right now most committed to? Maybe family, possessions, identity, maybe something else. Please do let me know. Just one more thing. When people who effectively go for refuge come together, and those who have made an individual commitment to the three jewels come together, they form something that's new in the world. Not just a group of people, but what Sangharakshita called a spiritual community, which is also our order. So effective going for refuge is marked by an ordination ceremony, making our commitment, being ready to make our commitment is marked by an ordination ceremony, something that symbolizes both spiritual death and spiritual rebirth. Of course, not literal death. Senior order members witness that somebody is effectively going for refuge and can continue to do so while in positive conditions. An aspect of the spiritual rebirth has been given a new Buddhist name. It is during my ordination ceremony that I received the name Suvannavira. So, why is commitment so important? Let's look at this in a little more detail. Firstly, as we've already seen, commitment's important to give us the ability to keep practicing in times of difficulty. What do I mean by difficulty? Maybe we find ourselves in unpleasant mental states. Maybe we just feel bored in meditation. We're practicing in a spiritual community and there's conflict within the Sangha, conflict which we take part in. Or we just feel stuck with practice. We don't know how to make it alive and interesting. If we want to have an ongoing spiritual life, it's important not to run away when things get difficult. Difficulties are inevitable even. But the experience of the Buddha, his Dharma tells us that we can overcome difficulties. Sometimes we overcome external difficulties by changing our own state of mind. And to begin with, we simply don't know what to do. So to have a chance of succeeding, we need to keep going. And for that, we need commitment. Secondly, commitment means making going for refuge to the three jewels our priority. Prioritizing our time, our energy, and other resources for going for refuge. Ordinary life will always throw up important things to do, urgent things to do. Ordinary life will always take up all of our time if we let it. The demands of work, and family and friends, for example. So to give our spiritual lives breathing space so it can live, we need commitment to making going for refuge our priority. Thirdly, commitment requires integration. Psychic integration is an important quality to develop. We can see meditation as a practice to unify our energies, unify the whole of ourselves into a coherent whole. Even though we usually think of ourselves as one person, Sangharakshita teaches that in fact we're a bundle of cells. One self wants to develop spiritually, and other cells want to do other things. So we never really do anything fully, never do anything with all our energy, with the whole of ourselves. One self dominates for a while, then another one dominates. Maybe some selves stay hidden and frustrated until they come out and make themselves felt. So commitment here means integrating all the different parts of ourselves onto the spiritual path. And lastly, closely linked to the last point, to spiritually develop, we need to work on all the different sides of ourselves, our strengths and our weaknesses, the teachings and practices we feel close to, and those we feel distant from. So committing ourselves means committing ourselves to the whole path of practice and keeping going. So the importance of commitment, continuing to practice in difficult times, making practice our priority, practicing integration, and working on our strengths and our weaknesses. And question for you, which out of these reasons for commitment sounds the easiest? Which sounds the hardest? I'd be glad to know. So we're looking at strengthening our commitment. And the question, do we ever reach a point where we can't give up on practice, where we can't give up on trying to get enlightened, where our commitment becomes so strong that it no longer needs good conditions to continue? The answer brings us to the third level of going for refuge, to real going for refuge. When our going for refuge is real going for refuge, it no longer depends on good conditions. It no longer depends on conditions at all. We've had a taste of the unconditioned. And we reach this level of going for refuge. We reach real going for refuge when we enter the stream that leads to nirvana. The experience is also called the arising of insight. Insight with a capital I. Meaning it's not a momentary glimpse of something that we can forget about, but a deep experience, the deepest experience that changes us on the deepest of all possible levels, also known as transcendental insight. So all these terms are synonyms. Tasting the unconditioned, entering the stream, the arising of insight with a capital I, transcendental insight. They all refer to one and the same change in the deepest state of consciousness, which can be seen, which has the effect of a permanent change in character. In the Pali Canon, we're told that we enter the stream when we break the three fetters. They're called fetters because they bind us to conditioned existence, to existence that depends on conditions. So what are these three fetters? It's a very important question to understand the nature of Buddhist practice and to show us what we need to do to make our going for refuge real going for refuge. It's only going to be a short intro. But the first fetter is fixed self-view. Fixed meaning something can't change. The opposite of flexible. So this fetter means having an attitude that we can't change. Whatever habits we have, good or bad, we can't change them. They're simply who we are. If we smoke cigarettes, we can't stop. We'll never be able to stop. We'll never be happy not smoking. I used to think like that. I used to smoke, but now I find cigarettes disgusting. Whatever qualities we have, good or bad, we can't change them. If we're an extrovert, we'll always be an extrovert. If we're an introvert, we'll always be an introvert. If at school we were good at science and bad at languages, we'll always be only good at science and always bad at languages, and vice versa. We'll never be able to change. We are the way we are. This fetter might also find expression in the belief in a fixed and separate soul with certain qualities, something fixed, something separate, something permanent, fixed self-view. second fetter is doubt, maybe doubt and indecision. It's important to say here, doubt doesn't mean honest doubt. With honest doubt, we're trying to find a truth. Here, doubt means a refusal to commit. Our word commitment again. Looking at an example of this, somebody's telling us, maybe for hours, how bad life is. We might think, oh, gosh, they're really aware of dukkha. This is promising. So suggest something to make things better. But they're not interested. They don't really want to do anything. They just like to complain. This is a fetter of doubt. Or maybe they give the teacher all sorts of clever questions, but they never follow the advice in the answers. They don't really want answers. They want to find fault with the answers, find fault with the teacher, so as to justify not doing anything positive to change. In this way, they feed their doubt. And this is the second fetter, the fetter of doubt, or doubt and indecision. The third fetter is dependence on rites and rituals as ends in themselves. In a way, all spiritual practice can be considered to be included in rites and rituals. Our practice of ethics, of meditation, of puja, meaning devotional practices, and the chanting of mantras. The heart of this fetter is thinking it's enough just to do the practice without giving any attention to our state of mind. It's a bit like going to the doctor when we're ill. We want to get medicine. Taking the medicine is all we need to do to get better. Nothing else is demanded of us. Nothing else to be more healthy. No need to rest. Don't need to improve our lifestyle. No diet, no exercise. Just take the medicine and carry on as before. When we take this attitude into spiritual practice, an example could be chanting a mantra. Thinking simply by chanting a mantra will make progress without giving any attention to our state of mind. This is especially so when people ask, how many times do we need to chant a mantra? And they expect an answer like 108, 107, or 109 won't do. It has to be 108. So here they believe what matters is chanting the mantra an exact number of times, not the state of mind with which we chant the mantra. Because does our state of mind really change if you do 107 or 109? So this is the third fetter. Oh, these are our three fetters: fixed self-view, doubt and indecision, and dependence on rites and rituals as ends in themselves. The question for you: which fetters are strongest in you? Which is easiest to recognize? Which fetter is weakest? When we enter the stream, when insight with a capital I arises, when transcendental insight arises, we break these three fetters. We break them all at once and get a taste of the unconditioned, a change, a turning about in the deepest seat of consciousness. Each, in fact, of these three fetters is an expression of one and the same spiritual experience from different points of view. And when this happens, our going for refuge arises to a new level. It becomes real going for refuge. We get a real understanding, a real insight in our very own experience of the Buddha's teaching and where it leads, even though we might still have a long way to go to transform all of our being on all its different levels, in all its aspects. When our going for refuge is real going for refuge, we can't fall away from the path. The earliest teachings tell us that a stream entrant will gain enlightenment not more than 7 lifetimes. 7 lifetimes of practice. So that's still quite a long time. And what happens when we do manage to change ourselves completely on all the different levels, in all our aspects? We reach the 4th and final level of going for refuge. The final level of going for refuge is called absolute going for refuge. Absolute going for refuge. Absolute meaning total, not qualified in any way, not diminished in any way. In other words, absolute going for refuge is synonymous with enlightenment. Here, we ourselves have become our own refuge. What more can we say about this level? The experience of absolute going for refuge can't be communicated by words, just like the experience of enlightenment can't be. But we can say something. When we reach absolute going for refuge, we perfect wisdom and compassion in us. We reach the pinnacle of the evolution of the individual, and we come to the end of the path, the endless end. And let's sit a moment and take that in before looking at one more aspect or dimension of going for refuge. So we've seen that absolute going for refuge is the highest level of going for refuge. But there's one more dimension which we haven't looked at yet, which Sangharakshita named cosmic going for refuge. Cosmic going for refuge not being a separate level, but rather the universal context in which the four levels of going for refuge are found. So what is this universal context? What is cosmic going for refuge? Sangharakshita said it was the urge of all in existence, from the simplest to the most complex, from the amoeba to the Buddha, the urge to raise itself to the next level of development, the urge to raise itself to the next level of complexity and organization. So in this regard, the idea of cosmic going for refuge is synonymous with the idea of evolution. The idea of evolution wasn't accessible to the Buddha. It didn't exist. It wasn't accessible to Eastern Buddhists in the past. It only became known in the West in the 19th century in scientific circles, forever associated with the name of Charles Darwin. The Bhante Sangharakshita recognized the potential in the word evolution for expressing the spiritual path, how it threw light on the true nature of the spiritual path, the path to perfecting the evolution of the individual. And question for you, what do you think about incorporating words from different cultures into the teaching of the Dharma, like incorporating evolution into the teaching of the Dharma? So I'd like to close by looking in a bit more detail at the idea of evolution. as a context of the 4 levels of going for refuge that we've been looking at. Bhante Sangharakshita not only talked about the concept of evolution, he taught that there was lower evolution and higher evolution. So let's have a look at the difference between the two. The nature of lower evolution was collective. It meant the evolution of the species, the race, the nation, the family back, the family, maybe, and certainly the business company or the sports team. In a word, it was the evolution of the group. However, the nature of the higher evolution was individual. The higher evolution depends on the effort of the individual. It's the responsibility of the individual, the choice of the individual making efforts to raise their level of consciousness, to unify their energies. It was like the lower evolution might wash us up from the beach, wash us up out of the ocean. The lower evolution could take us so far. But then we were left on the beach to carry on, alone in this strange new land. So Sangharakshita not only distinguished between the lower evolution and the higher evolution, he distinguished between the group and the individual. We can act as group members, accept the limits of the group as our limits, give responsibility for our choices to the group by following group values, group beliefs, and group lifestyles. A question for you: what groups do you belong to? Which are you happy belonging to? Which belonging to gives a sense of unsatisfactoriness? But as well as being group members, we can act as individuals, at least aspiring individuals, those trying to be individuals on the path of the higher evolution, trying to go beyond the limits of the group, taking responsibility for ourselves and our choices, searching for our true values, our real beliefs, and choosing a lifestyle that reflects them, a lifestyle that supports them. And our last question: what have you done that has meant needing to act as an individual? Our version, perhaps, of acting like our wandering ascetic, searching for truth, remembering the 4th sight of Siddhartha Gautama, the wandering ascetic being free to give himself to the truth, whatever it might be, going forth so as to be able to go for refuge. leaving the ocean of the lower evolution to stand on our own 2 feet, on the firm ground of the higher evolution. This is a context where we begin our journey on the levels of going for refuge, starting with provisional, going on to effective and real. And I sincerely hope one day, sooner or later, arriving at absolute going for refuge, where we ourselves become our refuge.